As time continues to pass, mods are becoming more and more ambitious. Today, we are looking at Fallout London, which I initially thought was an official DLC based on the marketing trailer. Team Fallen is not tied to Bethesda in any way and was actually almost taken down by them at one point. Thankfully, that never came to be, and now we have this complete overhaul available on GOG.com. I've always wanted to play a Fallout game that takes place in a different country, and the UK is a great location for it. Does this total conversion show that Fallout works outside of the US? Or is this just a palette swap with not much else in between? You start the game and are given an introduction with some narration about war never changing. To my delight, there is a ton of original dialogue and voices throughout the game. You normally never see additional voices in any total conversion mod, so this is a nice and welcome surprise. If you're a fan of British accents, there are a ton throughout this mod, so that'll help satisfy your craving there. Your character, however, is not voiced and will not have a lovely accent to go along with them. As expected, you'll be able to create and design your character in the way that you want. One thing I noticed is the huge amount of hairstyles on offer. Other than that, it's about what you would expect, with the ability to shape and mold your character in the way you want, including setting the amount of special points for each attribute. Not much has changed here, so moving on. Not soon afterwards, the lab is under attack by an unknown group of assailants. From here, it is time to learn your character and get the hell out of there. This will serve as a tutorial, which takes quite a long time. You'll also want to get familiar with melee combat, as you'll be doing that for the next couple of hours. Guns are definitely plentiful, but that won't be available until well after leaving the lab. After making your escape, you'll come across a group of fine British blokes hanging out not in a pub, but in the middle of the street. The biggest change you'll realize is that the dialogue system has gone back to the old school style of before. Instead of a voice wheel, you'll get a selection of conversation items to choose from. I'm glad to see this back, as many have preferred this to the oversimplified dialogue wheel of the vanilla experience. You'll also get to succeed on certain dialogue options depending on the ranking of your special skill. From here, I can choose to go to a town nearby or follow these fine gentlemen to a job that I need to do. Even though these men are part of some gang, I figured it was for the best, as they can provide me with some much needed firepower. A battle song was then given to me and we went off to do some tasks. And now I'm going to focus mainly on gameplay, because there's a surprising amount of story content here. Personally, I'm quite shocked at the amount of world building here. It shows a different perspective from overseas on just how the nuclear fallout has affected the rest of the world. This has resulted in new mutations and new creatures to interact with. It's very interesting stuff given the different environment they have grown up in. Personally, I would like to see if an official Fallout title will ever tackle somewhere else like Asia, or stick to its US roots. Team Fallen has really opened up a discussion here, and I'm proud of the team for it. Ultimately, this is a mod of Fallout 4, and with that comes many of the caveats you would expect from that title. While the vanilla game was more in line of a power fantasy game, Fallout London aims to be a bit more grounded with far more difficult challenges, especially early on. Ranged weapons and good armor are not very common early on, so you'll have to rely on melee in the early stage. Since you don't have much to start out with, you'll have to be a bit crafty scavenging for what you can find and taking precautions. Stim packs and RadAway are also very rare early on, so you'll have to be careful on putting yourself in too much of a risk. Honestly, the best thing to do is to run away and live to fight another day in the early going. No need to try to take down a whole army with just a walking cane. And speaking of weapons, there are quite a bit of new weapons to try out. Some are familiar weapons like the double-barreled shotgun and the like, but there are also plenty of unique weapons featured here. Personally, I enjoyed the Luger pistol a ton, as it had a very quick firing rate while doing a decent amount of damage. They even got freaking muskets, which, while slow as hell to reload, do a surprisingly high amount of damage. Personally, I would recommend for you to run a workbench as soon as you discover these new weapons. Similar to the base game, each weapon can be modified to your heart's content. I'm actually quite surprised with the high amount of options here on offer. Speaking of the musket, I took a musket pistol and turned it into a laser-tuned long musket rifle. It was my go-to sniper for a while, despite not having a scope to work with. I'm also well over 30 hours in this mod, and I still have yet to find all the guns and weapons here on offer. And before you can really modify these guns, you'll need to have the right perks first. As expected, you'll level up and can choose to upgrade a special stat or learn a perk. The perk tree is very similar to the base game, although it is presented in a different style. I also enjoy these new cartoons they made, giving Fallout London its own art style. It's like watching the British version of an old American cartoon with these animations. Great stuff once again. I was curious how they would handle managing settlements, which is a bit of a polarizing feature from the base game. I will say that if you do want to manage a settlement, you'll have to go out of your way, as following the main quest won't really present one right away. Instead, I met a tree that I can only assume was Durthu's cousin, and he gave me control of a settlement. It works about as well as you would expect, with the same clunky controls that plagued the vanilla experience. Still, I always enjoyed managing settlements and building up a nice home base for myself, so I still played around with this quite a bit. Honestly, there's just so much damn content here to play with that it's insane how this is a free mod on GOG.com. The best part of it is that none of it feels recycled. Every landmark that I visit has its own unique theme, with its own lore to learn about with the various tapes and logs you'll find throughout. The team really went above and beyond, making this feel like a possible post-apocalyptic London. Once again, great stuff and much respect to the commitment to the content here. Unfortunately, there is one major caveat with this mod, and it's pretty detrimental depending on your build. This mod is plagued with way too many crashes. For the first hour or two, everything was pretty smooth. After exploring London for a while and completing several quests, the amount of crashes skyrocketed to eventually becoming way too frequent. There were times where I had to load a prior save just to get past the constant crashes. It seems to happen at random too, when I'm just walking through the town picking up odds and ends, or when I'm in combat. Funny enough, the performance doesn't drop at all, so I'm not sure what is causing the crashes. I read that it may be a memory leak somewhere, but I swear I hear every crash nowadays is caused by some memory leak, so I'm not sure if that's really the case. While the overall game performance is fine in terms of frame rate, the loading screens are abysmal. Even though I have an NVMe SSD, most loading screens take about 2 minutes while entering the overworld. This may not seem like much, but I can't even fathom how slow this would be if someone had an old hard drive. Loading times like this bring me back to the early 2000s. This is definitely a throwback, but not a throwback I enjoy to experience. But despite the abysmal loading times and stability issues, I overall enjoyed this mod immensely. I'm always impressed seeing what a team of modders can create together with a unified vision. The location of London is well done, the amount of new weapons to play with is astounding, the new creatures to fight are fun, and there's a crap ton of content to keep you busy for quite a long time. It really says something where this can easily be mistaken as an official DLC for the amount of content and handcrafted assets found throughout. If you want to install this one, and I highly recommend for you to do so, follow the instructions on the GOG page linked in the description below. Thank you all for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.